Well, this video should have been out for a while, but there were some complications. I originally planned on releasing this video in the first weekend after the game's release, but sadly a bug prevented me from finishing the game for a few days. It is now patched and I had the time to finish the game and look into details to provide this review. There is quite a lot to say, some good and some less good, so let's get to it. Return to Moria is another attempt to make something more of the Lord of the Rings franchise, so dear to the hearts of many. While in the past there has been some pretty good attempts at adapting this universe in medias, like Shadow of War for example, the most recent attempts have been quite controversial, especially because of this incredibly low quality standard. Everyone remembers the incredibly failed release of Gollum on the 25th of May 2023. Because of this, I think it is fair to say that most people now look with suspicious eyes at any announcement regarding the Lord of the Rings franchise. That is demonstrated by the amount of negative comments under the first Return to Moria trailers, which were surprisingly harsh for what looked like something very decent. I think it is fair to say that people were so enraged by big companies botching a well-loved franchise to milk it for money and became overly critical in many regards. That being said, Return to Moria had a very interesting concept. It offers the players a chance to play as a dwarf and to reclaim the mines of Moria, a long-lost dwarf stronghold that has fascinated fans of the franchise for long. I was personally very interested in the concept. Though I am not the biggest fan of fantasy dwarves, I am fascinated by lost cities and underground environments, and like many of you, a big Lord of the Rings fan. So I kept watching its evolution and even played the closed beta. The beta showed a lot of promises, but after playing it, something was clear to me. The game was more than decent, but they would never have enough time to fix everything before the release date. In the beta, there was a lot of broken things and the performance was not great. I hunted my final opinion on the beta as they closed it and patiently waited for the release, eager to play it again but worried about what they had to accomplish in such a short time. Then it came out and I got it for free for a Rainmaker campaign, just like I said in my first impression video. Played it a lot. But then, as I was closing in on the end of the game, I got stuck. For a few days I was unable to complete the game because the only way to finish the game solo was pure RNG. Basically, you had to get a certain number of an item to craft something and access the last area of the game. But this specific item only dropped in random numbers on non-respawning monsters. I killed all the monsters and did not have enough. And so after hours of asking around and trying to get some more to no avail, I shut down the game for a few days waiting for a patch. When the patch came out, I finished the game, and I must say I was a little bit cut from the enthusiasm I had before that bug. This all might seem like a little rant, and it is. I am just getting a bit tired from companies releasing games unfinished, destroying their own reputation while the game could have been a banger, given a bit more time. Return to Moria will be good, and the devs are patching regularly and plan on making more content in the future, but it is sad to see once again an unfinished game on release. Rant over. As I already explained, Return to Moria makes you play a dwarf following the beloved character Gimli in an attempt to reclaim the mines of Moria.
A mine!
Due to an unfortunate series of events, you and your co-op partners get stranded inside the mountain, separated from the rest of the expedition, which is stuck outside. The game is a story-oriented survival game. This might sound a bit weird. A lot of survival games do not have a story, and if they do, it is a very small part of what the game offers. In Return to Moria, the story is very much at the center of the gameplay. You have quest markers and map objectives, but since the game demands quite a bit of exploration, a lot of the time you just have a quest journal entry and some indications, and then it is up to you to figure out how to succeed. The game does not hold your hand too much, though since your character speaks, he will sometimes give you some advice as to what you are supposed to do. Let me take this opportunity to talk about voice acting. While creating your character, you will select a voice. There is a few different voices that will change quite a lot of things since dwarves talk quite a bit. There is a lot of fully voiced dialogues and interactions with the environments. The dwarves sing, laugh, and discuss the events of the story in a very convincing voice acting. That being said, it can sometimes feel like they speak too much, and it can get annoying in combat when they keep saying the same lines. Talking about character creation, though it is not the most in-depth one I've ever seen, there is definitely a lot of variety and all dwarves are very unique looking. Thank God there is a possibility to make bearded dwarven women, a detail that could make any Lord of the Rings fan happy. Let me touch a bit more on the gameplay side. A lot of people would have expected a lot of mining in a game where you play a dwarf and enter a mine. But that is definitely not what you are going to be doing most of the time. Return to Moria is more about getting deeper and deeper into Moria, while restoring outposts in which you will take time to rest and gather materials, and recipes to upgrade your gear. Mining is very restricted and can only be done to remove debris from a crumbled gateway or mine resource nodes. Most walls in the game are indestructible. That makes it so most of the game is actually exploring a series of handcrafted rooms that the seed will place randomly and fill randomly with resource nodes. As such, the seed does not have the biggest impact on exploration, as no matter the seed, you will always stumble on the same rooms, just not always in the same order, and with different resource placements. Since, in the concept of the game, you are supposed to restore Moria to its former splendor, a lot of people probably expect quite a bit of building, but in order to complete the game there is very little building required. It is more up to the player to choose if he wants to engage with building or not. Though there is a decent enough amount of structures you can build, most of the time you will be restoring pre-made outposts and using quick platforms and ladders to get around the environment. You can definitely take a lot of time to restore the structures you encounter, but I think most players will do that once they have finished the story and have nothing else to do. The dwarven architecture actually looks quite good, and some areas can definitely end up looking very impressive with a player's touch. Building can be quite janky at times and the snapping is not always great, but it is good enough and does the job. When it comes to getting more things to craft and to build, Return to Moria is not always very straightforward. The two best methods are repairing statues you find while exploring to get rewarded with a craft plan, or you can try and build new craft stations to unlock more things. That being said, there is more statues and recipes you can get, and I found it very frustrating to repair a statue thinking you will get a new thing to craft only to see a few materials fill your inventory. In the beta you could also find craft plans by exploring ruins, but this has been removed, probably because of something I will talk a bit about later. Though there is quite a few resources you can get by breaking stuff in the abandoned houses, the absence of bigger rewards does not encourage the player to explore in details that much. I said I wanted to talk about the reason I think craft plans were removed, so let's go to something I think really needs improvement. There is not enough things to craft in this game. To me, the place where this is the most striking is in terms of gear. There are tiers of gear from 1 to 5. If I look at the tier 1 choice, I can get a sword and an axe. In the tier 2, I can get a sword, a battle axe, a hammer and a spear. Then if I get to tier 3, I will have a sword, a greatsword and a halberd. I will not go further than this, but you do see the problem. There are multiple weapon types, but not all of them exist in every tier. That means that someone who enjoys the hammer, for example, will not be able to play this weapon effectively at some point of his adventure, simply because, well, there is no version of his favorite weapon in multiple tiers, and that upgrading the tier of your weapon is pretty mandatory to enjoy combat a little. This game clearly is taking inspiration from Valheim in a lot of areas, and in Valheim, when you upgraded to the next tier, for example going from bronze to iron, there was an example of every weapon type for each tier, except some exceptions, but they are pretty rare. Valheim is an early access game and they managed to get more than in Return to Moria, which is supposed to be a full release. And the most interesting thing is that in some areas like cooking, there's a lot of different things to cook, but most foods give the exact same buff. I quickly want to talk about combat. It is definitely functional and it better be, considering there is quite a lot of it. It is however not the most satisfying thing. It is relatively simple and the enemy AI is very poor. Unless you get completely outnumbered, it is not overly difficult. There is another problem I want to talk about to point out how unfinished the game feels sometimes. I will make it spoiler free, so do not worry. There is this area where the game kinda hypes up a secret danger, and when you finally encounter said danger, it is quite a tough fight and you really need some good gear and good consumables to beat it. But when you do, you get basic resources and absolutely nothing special. This enemy can be encountered multiple times and it is a tough fight that gives nothing interesting. Maybe it is just me, but I feel like the risk-reward cycle in this game is, well, a bit broken at times. With all that aside, let's give a bit of a more positive intake. Despite what a lot of people say, I think the game looks great. The environments are diverse for most of the game. All of the first areas of the game are amazing, and some of them really make you feel the majestic past of the Lost Dwarf City. The last two areas of the game are a bit underwhelming. They are made of copy-pasted repetition of rooms you encountered way earlier, but it is functional. I really loved all the little references to the lore, the singing, and the general visuals. There are also scattered around Moria traces of the Fellowship of the Ring's passage through Moria, and it definitely makes the exploration feel better when you stumble upon something you recognize. There are boss fights in the game that are definitely interesting, though not insanely challenging either. There is also a noise mechanic that can trigger an orc horde event on one of your bases or on your location, and I really liked the way they did this. The story is also quite interesting, and the way it drives you forward feels pretty natural while not holding your hand too much. It gives some room to play a liberty and generally gives you the choice of in what order you want to do things. Overall, the map is well exploited and you will find yourself in need to explore quite a bit before you progress. I think there are more than one area in which the game does very well. The contrast between light and dark areas, the general ambience, and working your way through Moria, and I even would say that the pacing is pretty good. So what do I think in the end? What is my final opinion on Return to Moria? I really think the devs understood something about making a Lord of the Rings game, but I cannot help but wonder, would people be playing this game without the Lord of the Rings franchise? If it was just a dwarf survival game, would people have any reason to pick this game over another? Maybe for the cool story and nice environments at times, but there is nothing this game does better than any other survival game on the market. Is the game fun? Yes, it is. Exploring is cool, and in general the story is entertaining and engaging enough. The mechanics need to be perfected, they need to add more filler content, more weapons, armors, options in general. And I think the game could use more ambience music. I think it is a game that will definitely entertain Lord of the Rings fans, maybe people who want to take their time exploring with friends. However, if you do not care about the Lord of the Rings and just want to play a new survival game that can entertain you for a very long time, I do not think Return to Moria really fulfills that category. It is a very decent game, leagues above Gollum, and I do not think it tarnishes the Lord of the Rings franchise reputation, especially after some more patching is done. The focus was clearly made on the story over the player freedom, though there is definitely some. It is overall a rather linear experience, and I do question myself about its replayability. I have played on multiple seeds, and though it changes things, it is not drastic enough to get you lost like starting a new Minecraft world would. Overall, I would say I have mixed feelings with Return to Moria. I was really excited for it and I really had fun playing the game until the bug I mentioned blocked me. But I still feel like it could have been so much more given more time. I think the devs still did a good job, and the enthusiasm they show when it comes to player feedback and fixes tells me they are going in the right direction. I will watch with a careful eye on what the game will become in the coming months or years. I would still recommend it to people who love Lord of the Rings and people who want a not too long experience with friends. It took me about 35 hours to complete it solo, but I wasted a lot of time trying to figure out how to beat a bug, and I had my previous knowledge from playing the beta. If I were to give this game a note, it would probably be a 6 out of 10, that could go up to an 8 depending on the patches and the added content. About content, I will probably create a bit of it on the game in the future, so if this review convinced you to buy the game, well, stick around and you might see something you like here. That will be all from me. I hope you found this video useful. I regularly make reviews for different games, so stick around for some more. I hope to see you again. Bye.
Was young, the mountains green, no stain yet on the moon was seen, no words were laid on stream or stone when Turin woke, and hands upon a silver thread above the shadow of his head.
Till Durin wakes from sleep.